As I stated before, I am a huge fan of the Kaiju genre. Giant monsters beating the ever-loving piss out of each other and destroying cities. For the longest time, the Japanese were masters of this genre, but in recent years, the Americans have decided to throw their hat into the ring as well. The most famous of this being the Monsterverse. You know what they are: Godzilla 2014, Kong Skull Island, Godzilla King of the Monsters, and Godzilla vs. Kong. With a sequel to said movie coming soon, along with a Kong animated series and a Godzilla TV show. Heck, I would even put the Pacific Rim series as part of this genre of Americanized Kaiju as well. And it seems that it's still going strong, though I really hope they don't sacrifice quality over quantity. That being said, there is one little movie that I consider an official part of the Monsterverse that came between Kong Skull Island and Godzilla King of the Monsters. Sort of a blueprint for the later films, and of course, that movie is Rampage. For those who don't know, Rampage is a 2018 movie that is actually based off a video game of the same name that came out in 1986. Where you play as people who have been transformed into giant monsters after being infected by various stupid things. It's a standard destroy the city beat 'em up kind of game with a skated critique on capitalism.
Capitalism! Here's them!
There's really not much to talk about here, yet this series has spun several sequels and an aforementioned movie. You know, for a video game franchise that not many people talk about, it's doing pretty well for itself. So how do you adapt this kind of thing into a movie?
That's the neat thing. You don't.
Aside from the names, the types of animals, giant monsters destroying the city, and the bit of capitalism critique, Rampage has nothing to do with its source material, and honestly, in a way, it actually works in its favor. How so? Well, strap in and find out. So the movie stars Dwayne Johnson playing Dwayne Johnson. Yes, I know this character has a name, but let's be honest here. In almost every movie, Dwayne Johnson plays the same character, to the point where you don't even care anymore. You're just here to see The Rock. Anyway, Dwayne Johnson is a primate expert at the San Diego Zoo who is friends with this albino gorilla named George. By the way, any fans of The Boys out there, that is Jack Quaid cameoing as Season 1 Huey being chased by a gorilla. In my mind, this is canon. Meanwhile, a science experiment in space has gone wrong because of the shady dealings of an evil company that turns animals into monsters. And surprise surprise, canisters carrying the ooze, gas, crash on Earth. Yeah, screw it, it's just the gas form of the ooze that made the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But instead of making the Ninja Turtles, it made Gamera. So George gets infected along with two other animals, Ralph a wolf and Lizzie a crocodile. And when The Rock gets news that George killed a grizzly bear and sees that he's grown in size and tries to calm him down. All the while, we see a scientist played by Naomi Harris. Yeah, I'm not going to remember any of these characters' names. She used to work for the evil company and tries to take a look at George, but he ends up getting angry and trying to escape, but as soon as captured by the US government. Where The Rock and the scientist will meet a government official played by Jeffrey Dean Morgan, who has the fakest and most over-exaggerated country accent that will make the hardest redneck blush.
It is clever. You see, when science shits the bed, I'm the guy they called to change the sheets. Like my grandpappy always said, us assholes gotta stick together.
Well, looky here. Still in the hospital Whirlybird. Color me impressed.
Bro, you're from Seattle. Chill. Anyway, the government agent tells them that the scientist lady was fired from her evil organization and lied to The Rock, even though he really doesn't care. Meanwhile, there's an evil boss lady and her lackey brother who are trying to hide the evidence. By the way, if you look in the background of the villain's office, you'll find a Rampage arcade machine there. Nice little Easter egg. Anyway, they send out a bunch of mercenaries to find and or kill these monsters, starting with the wolf, but in the end, Ralph just ends up slaughtering them all. Seeing that their plan is in jeopardy, the evil boss lady puts out a signal that will attract the monsters. George ends up hearing the frequency and he ends up going apeshit. Oh come on, that was a good one! So thanks to George's monkeying around, yet I'm still doing these puns, screw you. The plane ends up crashing with our three heroes escaping and George surviving the crash. Anyway, there's some stuff that happens in between. The FBI investigates the evil boss lady. We learn how The Rock met George after saving the latter from poachers after they killed his mother. and the military is not taking the threat of giant monsters seriously. Anyway, the final battle is in Chicago where the monsters are just tearing up the place. Meanwhile, the scientists and the Rock are trying to find a cure, but they only realize they can only use it to stop the aggression of the monsters and their growth. But they are stopped by the evil boss lady and her lucky brother. So she ends up shooting the Rock and taking the scientists hostage. But her plans go down the drain when the monsters finally come. Surprisingly, the Rock actually survives being shot, and is able to move just fine, despite being shot.
I thought you were dead.
Well, I think she missed all the vital organs, but don't jinx it.
Yeah, just don't think about it. The scientist ends up feeding the evil boss lady to George, who happens to have the cure on her person, so it all works out in the end. Our finale has a giant monster battle in the middle of Chicago. Poor Chicago. First the Transformers, now this. Oh, and to top it all off, the military decides to drop a nuclear bomb to try to stop the monsters that could also possibly kill a bunch of innocent civilians as well.
I'm the government, I'm the government, I'm the reason nothing works.
So it's up to the Rock and George to stop the monsters in an all-out brawl before the nuke comes to destroy everyone. So yeah, as you can see, this movie is kinda dumb, but I love it. The 2010s was an era where there was filled with a plethora of stupid yet fun action movies starring Dwayne Johnson. He was everywhere during this time period. And here it is no different. Everyone in this movie is one note, there are so many plot holes and fallacies, but at the end of the day, this movie's not trying to break any new grounds. It knows what you came to see, The Rock and Kaiju. And honestly, being a fan of both of them, I was satisfied. The thing about Warner Brothers' giant monster movies is that they're just basically modern day and big budget versions of the Kaiju films of the Showa era during the 1960s and 70s. Originally starting off with something that was more serious in tone, it later evolved to something that was more goofy and fun. In fact, dare I say, this is what the Michael Bay Transformers films should have been. Despite being very loose with its source material, there is nothing offensive in Rampage. There is no filler that can leave you bored or frustrated. Despite the characters being one note, you don't really hit anyone. In fact, I would say they're a lot of fun. Yes, including Jeffrey Dean Morgan and his ridiculous accent. Unless you want to include the accent, there is no racial stereotypes or uncomfortable sex jokes. In fact, the only crude things that happen in this movie is when George gives the middle finger and does this gesture only one time. Speaking of which, there's no forced romance in this film as the two main leads don't get together. To the point that I would argue that The Rock in this movie is aromantic asexual.
To learn more about those submission techniques, if you have time for a drink.
Thank you anyway. I appreciate it. I already have plans tonight, okay? You did great out there today. Yes. Yes, I guess you could say that. She was part of my troupe. I mean, we're friends, right?
Yeah.
So congratulations, Aces, you have it, Chad as your representative. Also, this movie doesn't overstay its welcome. It's an hour and 30 minutes. Perfect timing. Now what I really love about Rampage is that it is a tribute to classic giant monster movies with each of the monsters taking inspiration from rather obscure kaiju. While many would see George as a second-rate King Kong, in reality he's actually an amalgamation between Kong's son and Mighty Joe Young. Yes, for those who don't know, there was a rush sequel to the original King Kong focusing on his abandoned son. While not as big as the original Kong, Kong's son was a giant albino gorilla. And also, where that scene where George kills a grizzly bear, that's actually a reference to Son of Kong. And Mighty Joe Young was a giant gorilla adopted by humans after his mother was killed by poachers, and when he comes to the human civilization, he goes on a rampage.
He said it! He said it!
But in the end, he ends up saving the day. Lizzie here would take inspiration from Anguirus, the first monster Godzilla fought but ended up becoming his best ally, with the dinosaur look along with a spiked back and tail. And let's be honest here, this is probably going to be the best representation of Anguirus in live action we're going to see for a while. I say live action because Anguirus did make an appearance in the anime Godzilla Singular Point. And Ralph, despite being wolf with his spikes and his ability to glide, takes inspiration from Varan. Who? You know, Varan! Had an obscure movie from the 1950s, a blink and you'll miss it cameo and destroy all monsters, was supposed to be in Giant Monsters All Out Attack before being replaced by King Ghidorah. He made some appearances in some crappy Godzilla games. Anyone? Damn, no one cares about Varan. And the sad thing is, this is probably going to be the only time he's going to get some kind of representation in an actual movie. It seems that Rampage would actually be the starting point where Warner Brothers monster movies realize, hey, we don't have to be serious all the time. You actually start to see bits and pieces of this in Kong Skull Island, which came out the year before, but it definitely starts to show in Godzilla King of the Monsters. But once Godzilla vs. Kong comes out, you can definitely see the influences of Rampage there, where the human characters took mostly a back seat and it was the monsters that stole the show. Because let's be honest here, this is the reason why a lot of people go to watch these movies. Overall, Rampage is dumb, nonsensical, and ridiculous, but that's what makes it so enjoyable. This movie knows what it is. A turn your brain off blockbuster kaiju movie that you watch on a Saturday afternoon. At the time of this video, it is the third highest grossing video game movie, right behind Detective Pikachu and Warcraft. Wait, why is this piece of shit number 1? Damn it, China! Sorry, Sonic fans, neither one of your movies managed to beat it. Maybe 3 might have a chance. Though I think the upcoming Mario movie might have everyone else beat. Overall, Rampage is a fun, dumb monster movie. Even if you're not a fan of the kaiju genre, I think you might get something out of it. Overall, if you have an hour and a half to spare, I say go check out Rampage.
Oh,